Hi everybody, my name is Michael Rice, work at Rackspace as a software developer. I'm going to kind of continue on with what I was talking about on Monday about the vCenter simulator. We're going to do a kind of a quick deep dive into some of the settings you can do to kind of further customize the simulator. Everybody see this legal disclaimer? All right. So, what we're going to talk about today, where are the configuration files located? How are the files laid out? What options can be changed? And what do these options mean and do when you make adjustments to them? So let's start with the config files. So all the config files for the simulator are, first off, in order to use the simulator, you need to make sure you're using the vCenter server appliance. So to get to the config files for that, you're going to log on to the actual server appliance, head to /etc/VMware VPX, vsim, and in the model directory, if you do an ls in there, you're going to find a whole bunch of different .xml and .cfg files. All these files can be edited, manipulated, and whatever to customize the inventory to kind of meet your needs. So let's take a look at what the default config looks like. So here we've got a default configuration file. So if you go and you start your simulator in default mode, this is the config it's going to be using. So it starts off with a config stanza and then has an inventory. And inside the inventory is where you can start kind of making your customizations. So the default comes with one data center, so that's where the DC1 is. So if you want more than one data center, you can adjust that number, higher or lower. Well, I guess you can't go lower than one because you need at least one. This host per DC 0, that's a little misleading because why would you have 0 hosts in a default file? So what this actually is the hosts that are not part of a cluster. So these are your standalone hosts. And so by default, there's 0. The next line is the VM per host. That's also 0. So these are the VMs that will live on the standalone host systems that are not a part of the cluster. Next is the powered on virtual machines per host. So that's also to 0 right now because there are no standalone host systems, VMs, and they're not powered on in a default config. So if you want some, for example, if you plan on doing some kind of script or code or whatever that's going to create a cluster, add hosts to that cluster, you might want to go ahead and add some hosts so that they'll get created. They just won't be part of a cluster. So the next line here we have is the cluster per data center. And so the default file is going to create 1. Next, we're going to have how many hosts do we want in each one of the clusters. So in our one cluster, by default, we're going to have 8 host systems added to that. Next, how many resource pools are going to be created in each one of the clusters? By default, again, here we're at 8. Next, how many VMs do we want on each resource pool? Default is 8. If you look at this next line, how many of them are going to be powered on? 6. So there's going to be 6 of them powered on, 2 of them just turned off. So you'll be able to immediately start using this thing to power on virtual machines. And so you'll have, two virtual machines per resource pool, so that you'll be able to power on with your scripts if you want. Now, how many port groups do you want for that in a distributed virtual with a DVS? Right, the default is 0. It just uses standard switches in a default config, but you can configure that, and it'll use a distributed virtual switch if you want. Now, the next line here, after the inventory is closed up, is worker threads, and this is how the simulator processes and starts bringing up the inventory. So if you have a pretty beefy system, you can bump this up. It'll spawn more threads, and it'll build the inventory out a little faster for you. With the synchronous true, you can watch the inventory get added as it's coming online. So if you add a very large inventory or you're on a slower system, you can log into the web interface of your virtual center and you can watch the inventory get created and added. So that wraps up a default config. So here's where those configs are located. Right, they're in Etsy, VMware-VPX/vsim in the model directory. Now, if you want a full explanation of every single option that's available to you in the simulator, check out this vsim.cfg.template. That file is very large. It covers every single option that you can manipulate in there. You can go make changes to data stores. You can add prefixes to all the different inventory items that get created. And this file will show you what you need to edit in order to make those kind of things happen. Now, if you want to just have a quick, how do I get 15,000 VMs up, right? Like, it comes with a sample configuration located in the config samples directory. They're at Etsy VMware VPX vSim model. In config samples, you'll find an example inventory file that will spin up 15,000 virtual machines for you. So if you want to test how quick your scripts are going to be able to run through and check the inventory and stuff on 15,000 VMs, there you go. Comes with it. One caveat to that is it's going to take a little time for that to spin up. So if you don't have a beefy system, you could be waiting anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes for that inventory to get fully populated. So where can you go for more help on the simulator? William Lamb's blog, virtuallyghetto.com. He's got a lot of good resources there. And then the last place I would say is the vsim cfg.template. That file has all the options in it. Everything you could ever want to know about the simulator is documented right there inside that file. So thanks for coming out. Thanks for listening. Have a good day.